It was basically going into a trance and going to the Akashic records and looking up their past, present and their future.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Because that's an exact idea of what this is, but in the microcosmic sense. That's what we individually do every time we do something new. We follow this principle. We start, this is thought. Everything is made of thought. They say, what is a subatomic particle? A quark, an electron, an atom. Yeah, and you keep going down and down and down until there is nothing, because the vibrations are now only suggestions in the field, they call it, a potential, a possibility. That electron's no longer even a spark. It's not throwing off any photons. There's nothing going on down there. And that's where they've made the mistake of saying, so we are all one. Because we're made up of this same non-event at its most basic point. But that's, while it might seem a logical extrapolation, the fact is, we don't exist at that level. Nothing does. Nothing does. We're here where nothing exists. It's what the Greeks originally called chaos. It's chaos, not actually chaotic in the terms of mad people running around tearing strips off the walls or shooting each other or some kind of madness. It's chaos because there's no order to it. Because there is no order. There is nothing. So there's no need for order. And you've gone way beyond the Akashic record by then. So if you want to do a reading and you want to use your cards or whatever other tools you use, you don't go here. You don't go to where all potential is nothing. Because you'd be going, I see for you...
Nothing.
Nothing. Pay me my money now and go home.
Sure, some do that.
And the rotten dogs make a lot of money. But anyway, you go here and you use thought to achieve that. And you do that by understanding how the principle of extracting the energy, it's not an actual extraction, it's what happens. When you die, you've seen people die, things die. It's very sad if you're emotionally involved. But if you can just take that step back and see how a body that is dead, or once was living and now is dead, slightly lighter in weight, somehow some shimmering thing leaves. I've seen it. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but I'm sure all of you have in some form or another seen it. It's like watching an electromagnetic field leaving a light switch when you flick it off. If you see the light globe as you turn the light off, there's a kind of an incandescence for a minute as the electricity leaves and it stops glowing. That's the moment, not so much of death, but of transition. And some people can sense that. And that actually is an energy. It does imprint. And you can sense it if your mind leans in that direction. That's how tarot works. That's how fortune-telling works. You're drawing from the past and you're using your brain, your transmitter-receiver device, to understand what you're seeing. Some people do it much better, and some people like to have tools like tarot works brilliantly for that. Right, so you're actually accessing this part, but as a consequence of this. There's no point in getting to this part from here because this is still in development. Now, the only one other thing I'd like to say about this for now, because there is a whole lot in the book, it's much more complex than this, but this is its basic idea, so you get the idea of where it's flowing, is that when you take a macrocosmic understanding of creation and how it happens once and it happens always.
Explain that.
With no beginning and no end. And now you've entered the law of the paradox.
It's like the circle, no beginning and no end.
Yeah. Paradox happens here.
Yeah.
Paradox happens here at this point in this sign. These are the horns of fate, also known as above, so below, as above, so below. Here's below, here's above. This is where everything is and everything is not. This is where they both combine to be in the same place at the same time. Two completely different possibilities and conditions existing at the same place at the same time. That's paradox. Living and dying at the same time is paradox. You are and you are not at the same time is paradox. Not irony, there's a difference. Paradox.
It's like so complex and so simple.
And so simple.
I've had those experiences sometimes. It's
Right.
so complex, but yet it's so simple. Yeah, I've had that a few times.
Yeah.
That's
Well, the
paradox.
idea is, in a minute I'd like to introduce you to the cupped hands closing too, which we'll do in a minute. But I'd like to say a little bit more about the difference now between Leonorian witchcraft and other forms of the craft. Apart from this, is that this has been extended now. Because when I learned, we didn't have any rituals. We didn't have any ceremonies. We had an understanding of this and one mirror ritual, which was simply looking at yourself in the mirror until you disappeared so that you could become nothing. And that was the purpose of becoming nothing, so that you could understand above and below to become nothing and yet still exist. And that was all we had. And one of my coven members said, Lee, do we have any rituals? Because a lot of people just don't use just their heads to think of things. They want to do stuff. They want to make it an actionable event. So I said, well, no, we don't. So I wrote some. So I say, well, this is what we used to do in my practice in the Australian branch of the Brotherhood of Light, because there's other branches that don't do that. They use correspondences like the Golden Dawn, which is different. We don't use those. But you'd understand the Golden Dawn principles. And they're wonderful, by the way. They're just not what this is. The difference is that now it's expanded with ritual and ceremony that are designed to help you to flow between worlds. Between this world and that world. To be able to go from here to there, if you will. Into the liminal, which is a state of mind that transcends the physical. It's where you go when you're really happy. It's where you go when you have that first sip of tea or that first puff on the cigarette or that first moment of sex, if you like, where you go, oh yeah, that's what I was looking for. The rest of it's just happiness. Or filling in time, depends on how much fun you're having. Yeah, you know, we've been there. But that moment, but that's the moment that you extend in the liminal, the flow between worlds, so that you can extend into the liminal, so that you can experience with full awareness, and that's the key, with full awareness, the law of the paradox. Purely and clearly and without doubt.